Good afternoon. It's about 20 to 2 on the 7th, and I just want to do a relatively brief video this afternoon in preparation for tomorrow. That would be the 8th through the next week, which will take us up to the 15th. So this would also include the discussion question and several other items. And as usual, I expect you to watch this and to look at the various video links that I post and other documents that I post to keep you in the loop, so to speak. And here we go. So the first thing we're going to do is share. And here we are. You'll notice that this doesn't have the YouTube link on it yet because I'm, in fact, at this moment, recording the YouTube up. Rather, I'm recording, taking the Zoom session that I'm doing right now and recording it and then turning it up into YouTube. So you have the link that you can actually access. Before we get to some of the other, I want to call it Mickey Mouse details, but some of the typical things that we go through each week, I just wanted to point out what the discussion question is, because the discussion question for this coming week clearly works into and with the what I'm about to represent to you. All right, so the next discussion question is generally speaking about CRT, that is to say, critical race theory and DEI. That would be diversity, equity, and inclusion. Buzzwords to some extent, although I do not wish in any sense, matter, or form to demean them in the slightest. I just wanted to use some of the shortcut words in order to have them recognizable to you as you understand some of the tasks and issues and challenges that you'll have when you become actual district leaders, superintendents on down. So I gave you kind of a tough question to work with this week that piggybacks back to several weeks ago when I did a brief conversation about systems thinking and Peter Senge, returning to Peter Senge, and I'm going to go over him in more detail within this video to use as a baseline, as a filter, as a yardstick for you to, and it may not even be the best model of yardstick, but I think it's the one that I choose to use to reinforce it for any number of other reasons in order for you to assess, evaluate, judge, notice those higher order thinking skill verbs, DEI and or controversial and or CRT, critical race theory issues that are uh, abundant, I guess is the word I was looking for, among school leadership in terms of challenges. And when I say this abundant, I don't want to put a quality judgment on that, but I do mean to say that just about every district I'm aware of has had to find ways to satisfactorily support the issues that are associated with those three premises in a legal way, in an ethical way, which isn't always legal, and in an educational way, as well as, quite frankly, as a political variable as well, because that can't go away. I just realized I should be doing something. No, I'll save that for later. So here's the discussion question. The systemic variables per Peter Senge are a good way to frame how matters of controversial topics or new issues might be taught. And by that, I mean, by controversial topics, I mean most anything that you think might be controversial. It could be a relatively minor point, or it could be something pretty inflammatory in and among the community. And some examples could be, but aren't necessarily limited to, matters of diversity, of equity, and inclusion, and matters of to the extent to which schools are responsible for teaching controversial theories, like critical race theory as such. I'm not sure responsible is the right word, but I think it is, but I could see that some people might object to that particular description. So I'll go back to the beginning and say, again, the systemic variables per Peter Senge are a good way to frame how matters of controversial topics or new issues might be taught. Using any or all of these, describe an event, initiative, or matter of difference that your district leaders may have encountered. I'll give you one fast example. I'll probably come back to it as I just thought of it. It's a school district that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm not sure if I have the right term. I apologize because I know there's some people from that district in this course. Um, I want to say it was an LBGQT club. I'm not sure about that, but I do know there was a club or a meeting, a place for uh, students who are any of those uh, or any of those lifestyles who met regularly and who had created a flag. And one teacher, I'm not sure if the teacher was the moderator of a specific club or not, had hung a flag up, a LBGQT flag. And again, if I'm not necessarily representing that correctly, those of you who are familiar with the details, please email them to me so I can uh, bring them to the fore. In fact, and maybe even use them in September 14th meeting, live meeting. The Board of Education objected to it. I'm not sure who else objected to it, but I do know that the board, I'm not sure it was all the board members, but I presume a majority of the board members insisted that the flag be taken down. If I'm not mistaken, the high school principal wanted to support the teacher and the kids and wanted it to stay up. I could be wrong about that, but in the short term, if I'm not mistaken, it got taken down. That sparked a great protest from the community, from the kids, and many number of people picketed the Board of Education building, central office building. And I'm not sure whether it's been settled or not as such, but there's an example of DEI issues, and there is an example of controversial issues because they sort of obviously overlap. So basically, what I'm saying is, if you can comment on that issue if you want to do some homework about it, or you can certainly think of an issue or something that people get all upset about in your own school district as such. It occurs to me, and this is after the fact, and I could be wrong, but I have the idea that school teachers, especially social studies teachers, but not necessarily only social studies teachers, where we are given some guidelines about how to approach issues associated with the election that just passed. Would be potentially an example of how one would deal with controversial topics. And I'll come back to some others up the road. Now, you don't have to use Senge if you don't want to. If you're familiar with another model that you think has a bearing on this issue for us to understand it, feel free to write with those variables. Just tell us what they are and where you found them so we can use those instead. But I chose to use Senge because I want you to get used to those ideas that Senge has offered. That's the discussion question. Now, back up to the top. These are the particular goals I'm looking at working with you on in this particular video. First of all, I want to remind you that two things, really. If you see this video before the 8th, which is today, or tomorrow rather, if you see this video before the 8th, that's your last chance to drop out of the course. Oh, I take that back. Never mind. Scratch that. Never mind. Forget it. So we're saying with the next live date, full synchronous class, no excuses for being out unless you clear it with me, would be next Thursday. Is it next Thursday? The 14th? No, a week next Wednesday. Today's the 7th. So you will meet with me from, what is it, 4:30 to 6:30? I forget the exact time. 4:45 to 5:40, 6:45. I'll get that straight before I see you. And that'll be a live class. And I will post the link. And that class will be a workshop. That 2 hours will largely be devoted to all manners of strategic planning issues. I'm not going to talk too much about it today. I will for a moment, but that's really what I'm pointing out, that our next live date is November 14th. And it's going to primarily be about the strategic planning assignment. And by the way, you know that the other assignment, the last assignment, besides the strategic planning assignment, having attended a board meeting. I've not read the material that what you posted, but that was due on the 5th. Some of you had some problems loading it up, and that was on me. I didn't make it visible until I realized I had hit the wrong button. If you sent me your Board of Education assignment before you found the space on Brightspace, I had asked you to leave it on the email and take it down. But if you could also upload it to the Brightspace space, it would be appreciated. And so, but the very last assignment, if I'm not mistaken, is due on the 5th. And I never know when classes end, but I think that that might be the last day of the class. I'm not sure. So if anybody knows when that is, I'd appreciate it too. I'll just look it up and let you folks know. So that'll be mostly about strategic planning. I'll talk a little bit about strategic planning uh, before we get started in a moment. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time on controversial race theory and controversial issues. In fact, I'm going to pause this for a minute because I realize I need something that I can't get at right away. So let's come back to that. How am I trying? I'm just trying to pause the recording. And we're back. What I needed was right in front of me. I just forgot that I put it there. Don't get old. Let's go back to sharing. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on strategic planning, more time on critical race theory and on DEI issues. And you notice I highlighted the yellow with the critical race theory, the CRT, uh, because they kind of will both come under the same umbrella. I've given you some websites. There's some text material to take a look at. I would say pages 12 to 14. Book is kind of skimpy on discussing this, understandably so in certain senses. But if I were rewriting Owens's book, which is probably the most popular book about district leadership in the country, if anybody cared what I thought about it, I would rewrite different emphases in this book for many reasons. Another material is your video. You're going to see a BOCES flyer at the end. I'm not sure how, in a module. I'm going to post that up into a module so you can just see it. And basically what I'm saying is in the module that a book I keep alluding to, my latest book, Co-Creating the Future, which is really all about strategic planning with a how-to simulation built into the book that and becoming pretty popular actually around the country. We're going to do a workshop about it for Eastern Suffolk BOCES on February 4th, long after this course is finished. It'll be a full day workshop. When you see the flyer, don't turn green at the price. What you do is, if you're interested in taking the course, and I kind of recommend that you do. First of all, you get a free book, if I'm not mistaken, and a copy of the book, and secondly, you'll have a whole day of experience, and you could probably run a lot of these things that other people won't know a thing about because you will have had some of those ideas in this course. And then what you do is you ask for a professional day, and you ask for the district to pay for the course, which I think is $199 or $299. I think $199. So you don't have to pay for that. They should pay for that. If you have to pay for it, don't come to the course unless you're really interested in doing it. And I hope that you do. But by no means, don't take out a mortgage to take the workshop. But I will have the flyer there for you to consider. So those are all the materials. And what I don't have here, I'm just going to just take a second to talk about it, is strategic planning. I just added that to the list. And I'm going to give that a different color. Which color should I give this? What do you think, Samantha Barilla, who's sort of my conscience in this class? How about that color, whatever color you call that? That purple or pink? I don't know what it is. Okay, so I want to say I've met with maybe half of the class on Zooms and through phone calls and through and various emails, and people have asked me to comment on their materials to date. And I'm pleased that that many people have asked, not for my ego, but because that you will recognize that I'm more than willing to help you get this done properly. And it's one of the reasons, as I said to someone the other day, why I introduced the topic back in October purposefully, because I know that the topic, that's rather the task, uh, isn't as complex and as difficult as I sometimes make it sound like it might be, so much as it's got a lot of moving parts, and you need to really be aware of how these come together. Every time I teach this, I teach it a different way and sort things out. And I can see there are some things that I will do the next time I teach this course, if and when I do, uh, to emphasize something that I have really spotted with this class that they've missed. Two things. One's going to be kind of cranky when I say I'm not cranking at anybody specific. I'm just saying this as an observation that I'm finding that everybody's watching the videos. Well, that's sort of silly because in effect, that's your class, and you can watch it in pieces or whenever you want. That's what asynchronous is for. But not to watch the videos is a boo-boo. Because what I'm doing is I'm mirroring the syllabus, I'm mirroring the Owens book. I'm throwing in lots of extra skills that none of those places have, bringing in videos in my most earnest and sincere effort to have you master a whole umbrella of skills that district leaders must be aware of. They're not all that different from the building leaders' different skill sets, but they are different. And for you to get those perspectives and be able to apply them to your thinking and your problem solving is really critical. And so I'm finding that folks are not watching the videos, and that's a no-no. I can't, I'm not gonna have you stand in a corner or give you a zero if you don't. But it's really it falls on you professionally to do what you need to do to keep pace with the course. The other piece is I dropped the ball. That's probably a strong term. I realized that I may not have emphasized the strategy gathering, goal setting piece as well as I probably should. I'm going to do more of that next Wednesday, the 14th. But very quickly, this is my suggestion, and it's not a rule or it's not a you must. It's a strong suggestion. What you need to do is review the list of, and I have given it to you in a couple different ways. But if you're looking for it at your fingertip, it's in the template I provided. And what you do is you look in that in the square, the box, where you see the list of different information gathering strategies that you have there. And by the way, that is not an exhaustive list. That's just a broad topic ways, things that a district leader would be responsible for in order to gather as much information and data as they can in order to squeeze a goal out. So there's the wrinkle, I think, is in a certain sense you need to do to get the information. You're worrying about uh, achievement between special education kids and general education kids. That's your concern. You want to find out what that's about. You want to make a plan to help make that better. Well, what do you need to know? How would you find out what you need to know? And those are all the different choices that I gave you. Then I squeezed you a little bit harder and I said, you need to, I didn't want you to do them, he shouted, but I did want you to identify what you would do. There were two or three, however, that I did say you should do with between your ears, not actually. Uh, One would be SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the other one would be, no, I forgot. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I haven't got the template in front of me. Focus groups. Uh, you can't do a focus group by yourself, but you certainly can do a SWOT. Let's stay with the SWOT. If you stay with the SWOT and do with the SWOT, why is this a problem? Why is there a gap between the kids? Why don't special education kids get more support? Why doesn't the district want to spend the money? Why isn't it a stronger value in the district? That might potentially could be a root cause. So as you come down through that list, through that process, you're going to come up with some goals. when it comes to root causes. And when you come to the root causes premise, you do next is you uh, turn one of them into a goal. That's the goal. So in a certain sense, you've got to perform some information gathering strategies as best you can, even if you're not actually doing them with other people. Perform the one or two, then convert something that you see that pops out, turn that into a goal. Then you march across the template. As you get to that last column, the probable futures column, or sometimes I call it the yes but column. It depends on the day that you talk to me. That's a different story, and we're going to spend some more time with that on the 14th. So those are the two things I'm seeing. And if you haven't gotten at this point, if you haven't squeezed down, some of you have, but more of you have not. If you haven't squeezed down to which strategies you're using and which root causes you're addressing, and for whatever issue that you cleared through me, then you can't make a goal. So you've got to go first to information gathering strategies, perform some of that, then go back to the goal box, give me a goal, write up the goal. If you, just about anyone who's come to see me online knows that I've changed the goal. And by change, I didn't throw it away. What I've done is I've helped you reword it to make it cleaner. And I'm pretty good at that. And so I can help you do that. And then you'll have your goal and you'll have one box in the strategy column. Then we go into, well, how would you solve the problem? I'm not going to get into that more deeply in this video. We've done it at least twice that I can recall, and I'll do it again with you next Thursday as I begin to heavily workshop that. But remember now that the 14th is about 3 weeks away from when the assignment is actually due. In between that is Thanksgiving. So it's not as though you have as much time as you think to get that done. And as I said, just to clarify this, and I'll re-say it next week, uh, you're going to complete the template, and then you're going to do around a 7-slide PowerPoint. Not much more than that. I'll stop you when you present it if you go much farther than that. It's going to help us understand what the template is saying. Some of you got some pretty good ideas and some pretty good topics and goals, but I haven't seen everybody, so I really can't comment on those. But so I guess I'm uh, using my blunderbuss to shoot pellets at all of you, so you all know I'm here for you. I'll help you. I'm trying to clarify what might be confusing and give advice about how you may go about completing this. But if you don't talk to me somehow, then I can't help you. And enough of that. We'll go to that on Thursday. And so much for strategic planning. Let's go over to, well, I just did that. Okay. That was my pitch there. And now we're into Samantha. I'm going back to yellow. All right. And so, without let me put it this way. Superintendents are retiring by the dozens. Many reasons for that. If I were doing real research on this, I would say the challenges have become numbing for superintendents. So many things hurtling and coming at people from left and right that those challenges can wear somebody out really quickly. I don't know if this is still true, but maybe about 10 years ago, that the shelf life of a superintendent in one district was about 3 years. Superintendents, by the way, are the only school personnel who do not get tenure. They go from contract to contract. And so their lives as executives of a multi-million-dollar corporation is always tenuous. And it's really at the will and the whim of boards of education who often, but not always, but often are steered by political interpretations of things that they may not want to be part of. And so a central office position, especially a superintendent's position, uh, has become increasingly complex. There's laws hurtling at everybody from left and right, and policy issues necessary for the daily 365-day operation of the school corporation. But it's really obviously goes beyond that. Um, Anyone who has become a superintendent for any length of time has my earnest and sincere respect, because there's a lot of sacrifices that a district leader has to make that most of us are not familiar with or would want any part of. And so that's hence a course like this gives you a taste for it, but certainly not. You have to be in the position, I think, to truly understand all of the skill sets and experiences that you need to have to be a great educational leader. And again, there's another way to look at it, and one would be on a scale of 1 to 10, with one being a manager, making sure the trains run and the buses, come up on time and pay people get their paychecks properly and those kinds of things, to truly, transforming a district, leading a district wholesale to try to improve what they do to make it right by students in a challenging century in which you will all live. I think the election that just passed is probably a good example of the things that are out there that, on one hand, nothing to do with education, and on the other hand, have everything to do with educating 21st century citizens. So enough said about that. And there are things that come and go. There are certain things like, for example, one issue, and I know I've mentioned it before, I want to say maybe 15 or 20 years ago. Most of you probably were too young to remember it. And those of you who might have suffered it from it, not specifically, but indirectly, when the matter of AIDS was coming around. COVID was, was one thing. AIDS was another epidemic that was fearful, frightening, and deadly. And as the epidemic began to mushroom, I remember we had a teacher in one of my departments, and I was running a textbook committee meeting, and man came in. He was sitting in the back of the room, and he just looks not well. So I said to him, "You feel okay?" He said, "I feel terrible." So I said, "So leave." So he said, "No, I got to be here." It was a textbook selection thing. The man professionally thought his presence was important, and I respected that. And I knew the man had hemophilia. I said to myself, "This man has AIDS." And sure enough, he was dead within a couple of months after that. I never forgot that. Uh, and so the whole contagion connected to AIDS was controversial on a number of counts, and many numbers of counts. And finally, the states, I may have been the federal government, I forget, stepped in and said to the states, "You're going to have policies about AIDS education, and this is what the education will look like by kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade." Well, I can't begin to tell you that it really became an issue, at least in the district in which I worked, and I know lots of other places. One of the things, and some of you know this and others, most of you probably don't, it was one lesson mandated by the state that talked about how AIDS could be transmitted. One way was because you could have gotten a transfusion in those days, where you could have contracted AIDS that way. But there are other ways that were also controversial to be discussed, especially in lower grades. And the mandate was that one lesson would be taught in sixth grade. If you, as a parent, did not want your child to and they had the right to see the lesson plan, it was developed by the district and within the guidelines that was set, and quite frankly, very nondescriptive in most respects, from my point of view. You had the right to pull your child out of the class, and the child would have to go to the library or some other place for that 40 minutes or an hour, while the rest of the students would be part of the thing. Well, so we had a couple of meetings, uh, district meetings, and we had some building meetings in some places where it was uh, being more nearly objected to, and people came out of the woodwork objected to this because they didn't understand what the policy was about, and they misunderstood and were misinformed about what the lesson was going to be about, for example. And the only way for the district to handle this properly was, first of all, to observe the state guidelines. You had no choice in that. And I thought they were thoughtful. Uh, but the other part of it was that you had to be transparent about this lesson. It gives parents the right to say what they wanted to say, and as well as give them the right to remove the child from the building, or rather from the lesson. And that's the kinds of principles that apply. Now, all of that same premise of age education uh, certainly translates to critical race theory, although it has nothing to do with diseases in the slightest, but the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I may have said this to you recently, but I will repeat it. You can be in one district that's physically contiguously touching another, and you could be in north and south, left and right, in North Korea versus South Korea, which is, pretty, they touch each other, but two different countries, two different kinds of economies, and one suffers greatly and the other one flourishes. Uh, in one district was very well off, had a great tax base and plenty of money, where kids could get all kinds of lessons, learn all kinds of languages, have every technological advantage that you can possibly imagine. And in a district that was contiguous to another district that was the poorest district on Long Island. It's in the high school, and if I'm not mistaken, it had think about it, this is the high school, one room devoted to all music instruction, general music, chorus, orchestra, whatever, strings, whatever the other music uh, strands may be. But the other building had all these tremendous advantages and resources. Well, that's not equal. It's inequitable. Believe it or not, in Newsday the past week or so, in fact, one of my sons-in-law asked me about this the other day. And this comes around, I would say, maybe every 10 or 15 years. Someone says, well, we should merge districts. It will share some services and we'll share money. The money expenditure will be more evenly spread out, and it'll be a good thing. And what happens with that is it never happens, because District X doesn't want to have its kids playing football with the kids playing football who are always their rivals. Things like this. They look like the tax base may be higher in one and lower than the other. Now the tax base will be equalized, and so some people will get more funding than they had before. Others may have a fund reduction, which is never true. All kinds of controversy and mudslinging and so forth. But that's an attempt by the state to make things more equal. So pay attention. You may be aware that your districts are under consideration. I'm not going to say which districts because I actually don't know. I can guess, but I don't know for a fact. And that's an issue that's out there, especially on Long Island, because we have some of the richest districts in the state, if not the country, and some of the poorest, believe it or not. And so it makes people very nervous when they see that their tax money and their resources and their emphases would go to someone else. And again, that's just something that a district superintendent, particularly maybe the business official, has to navigate to be very transparent, very clear, and to future with and for our community residents, constituents, so they understand what this is all about. So rather than play these videos at you and tell you what they say, I'm going to tell you that most of these are very short. One of them is kind of long. And on that one, I would invite you to this one here, the very last one. I put this deliberately in for libraries because libraries take hits on materials. The classroom teachers do too. The library takes hits on materials. As you know, there are many states that have gotten very clear on banned books. And they've gone through school libraries and banned books that have been taught with kids from forever, but have, according to these individuals, objectionable materials in there for age level and for emotional responses. I may have told you this. I ran, was that an AIDS committee? No, it wasn't an AIDS. It was, yeah, I think it was the AIDS committee, but somehow I had a woman on the committee. It was a very lovely person who objected to some of the books that we were using in the English curriculum. And one of the books was Of Mice and Men. I'm not sure how many of you had to read it when you were in ninth or 10th grade, but it's a standard book most people, many schools run. I'm not laughing. I shouldn't be laughing. I just get exasperated sometimes. And this woman came in and she didn't want her child, who was in the 10th grade, to read Of Mice and Men. So I said to her, Mrs. Smith, you know what you can do. You can take this book, you can take your child out and put the child, or put him in the library and give him an alternative reading, and we'll handle it. She said, that's not good enough. I don't want anybody reading this book. So I said, why? So I said, and she went on to say that the teenage pregnancy rate in the township in which the district was located was the highest on Long Island. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the person declared. And one of the reasons why it was the highest on Long Island, and I'm not sure that it um, was because there was prostitution there is the idea of prostitution. One of the characters is the prostitute in Of Mice and Men. And the book was, in fact, glorifying prostitution. So I said, let's talk about this some more. We went through the book together. She pulled out passages, and I had my English chair work with her on that. And she wouldn't budge. So in the end, we observing the district policy, we went with that. So, okay, no, we let them come out, but it wasn't like she didn't trust us. She certainly saw we were making every effort to take care of that. I dropped the ball on another count. I want to say it was February, because February is typically Black History Month. It is Black History Month. I had a woman call me up from a parent in an elementary school and said, and it was a fairly diverse school, as it's a fairly diverse school, period. And the woman was African American, and she said, there's not one book about African Americans in the library. I said, really? I said, I'll meet you down there. So I meet her at the front office. We go into the library, and I go to the library, and I say, no books about African Americans, history, biographies, nothing. She goes, that's not really true. I got books spread throughout all kinds of subject areas. We went to the computer listing of the materials, and I don't remember the number, but there was a goodly number of a spectrum of premises. Clearly, most of them in history, but also in literature. And not sure if I remember seeing them anywhere else. So I said, so what's your policy about these books? I said, well, anyone child wants to take the books out can take a book out, unless their parents don't want them to. So the parent was not totally satisfied, but she did own up to the fact. She said, I guess I was misinformed. So I said, well, is it possible? And I even asked her, I said, was it possible that this particular teacher is not observing Black History Month? She said, no, he is actually, but I don't know if he's given enough. He has enough literature, enough books to use to give kids, all kids, a deeper sense of African American history. So I said, I'll have the principal take that up. I'd rather have the principal deal with that, and he'll get back to you. And he did. I don't remember the outcome of it. Those are the ways I'm holding out to you that have to be dealt with. Now, again, when you come back to matters of critical race theory holds that racism in the American fabric isn't going away. That in fact it's part of the fabric of who we are, and we can't deny it, and it can't particularly be changed. I don't know if I agree with that totally, but I certainly don't
This is a
disagree.
reminder, Andy.
Alexa off. I don't disagree with the premise that uh, there are certainly threads of racism that are very evident at any given time. Hence the reason to confront it, and hence the reason to understand it in the hope that we can eliminate, if not reduce it, if not eliminate it. So I personally have no problem with that, and that's how I treated it when I was in district office and as a principal. However, the smart leader will do like what's here. I'm just going to show it to you. This is an actual board policy from a district in Kansas. I urge you to I'm sorry, New Hampshire. I urge you to take a look at it. First of all, look at the format. All right. Usually it's labeled. This was somehow labeled IMB. I'm not sure why. It gives an introduction. Okay. It affirms rights in this case, because this policy is about teaching and learning about controversial issues. Okay. It takes a stance on all students deserving education that helps them understand who they are and where they come from. In other words, to think critically, which is a dirty word to some people, our students need the freedom to learn the whole story of America, our triumphs and our losses as such. And then they left the space to insert other references, legal references, which is a smart thing to do. And then identifies appropriate practices. So I'm just going to read the first one to you. Teacher is confident that any controversial subject to be discussed belongs within the framework of the curriculum and state standards required to be taught, that the subject is significant as well as meaningful for the students, and that through discussion, students will have the opportunity to grow their knowledge and understanding. Now that says more than it may sound like it says. It presumes that teachers have been taught how to teach evenly. I'm not sure if neutrally is the right word, but evenly so that one can provide balancing information for people to consider. According to the student's age level, I mean, an eighth grader can think more critically than a third grader, I think. And so the presentation of that kind of information, were it to come up, needs to be treated with a different kind of a glove than how you might do with an eighth grader or a 12th grader. Teachers drop the ball on that sometimes by allowing one point of view to dominate the other point of view, and that the teacher shouldn't do, in truth. But that would come down from district office to assure that that particular policy, whether it be a CRT premise or a matter of assuring that you include all students and according to their capacities to learn how they need to learn in order to be functioning capable citizens. That's a tremendous responsibility, isn't it? So if you were to go back and consider that with some of these other premises that are here, I think you'd have a pretty good handle on things. And real fast, my time is running out, so I can't. Maybe I'll do this next week. I feel like I have to. If you watch this little 3-minute video here about Senge, that would help you recognize how you can assess how a school district is dealing with controversial issues or matters of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Diversity is a little different That's about hiring practices as much as anything else. And that's an issue maybe I should do differently. Because that is a real difficult issue to discuss on Long Island. It's not necessarily controversial, but it's an obligation for us to, one fast story, then I'm going to go. Uh, you can take it for what it's worth. It's just what professors sharing an experience. But it said so much to me. It was 2012. I was doing a site observation in a district that was completely cultural, very diverse. It was the day after the re-election of Obama. Must have been 25 kids in the class, and probably more. It was a huge class. And I was in there to observe the teacher and observe a student and observe the student teacher. And teacher brought in some TV sets and turned on that morning's news. And the first thing that came up on the news was that Obama had been reelected. And there's his face up on the thing. I have to tell you, the kids squealed in joy. I have never, in all my many years of living, personally and professionally, ever have been struck with the depth, width, however you pronounce that, extent of the joy and happiness these kids expressed. I took that to mean that they never saw, or they weren't used to seeing, anything but a white male president. That's a matter of diversity too. And so hiring practices have to be very carefully. We're going to do a separate class on that. Equity and inclusion we can understand, I think, fairly well, but diversity and hiring practices, that's another issue. So we're going to save that one for a rainy day, maybe next week as such. Okie doke. So I'm going to call this a day. I will post this before the day is over. Maybe tomorrow. I'll be posted as soon as I can. And then you'll have it to help you work through the discussion question. And I will see you next Wednesday. Remember, if you're not going to be there, unless you have a God forbid, I hope that you don't, I expect that you let me know. Thank you.